Welcome to Session 4 of Applicant Tracking Training. In the previous sessions, we've reviewed how to publish the site, how to create job postings and push them out to that site. And in today's session, what we're going to review is managing the applicants that have come into the organization, reviewing their application and information they put in online, and then how to make a decision either to hire or decline that applicant. So once again, we're at the Applicant Tracking homepage. We got there through the Settings menu. And clicking on Applicant Tracking, and the screen that you're seeing now is the first page that comes up. A quick note, and it's a common mistake that happens oftentimes, is if you're looking for information, you want to make sure that you are filtering up here at the top. By default, when you come in, it'll have all categories. The status will always be to open, and the start date is going to be about the last 6 or 7 months. If you need to change that, maybe there's a pending position you haven't approved yet and you want to go ahead and look at that and open it up, then you can change your status here. Right now we're only looking at open. We could look at positions we've already filled or positions that maybe a manager's created that you need to approve, and they would be sitting here in the pending status. The start date, as we talked about before, those are the start dates that the position was pushed out to the site. That's not necessarily the date that the position is going to be in employment. All right? So another common mistake here would be if there's a position that, let's say that we're in towards the end of August here, and I see that my position, I'm only looking at things that start between January and August. If I've set something that I want to push out on September 1st, that's not going to appear in my list right now. Change your filter and choose your filter button here in order to see those positions. Okay. So on this screen, there are a couple key screens. Think of 3 menus that we're going to go into to help manage the applicants that have come into each position. The first screen is just kind of our high-level overview. It's the first screen that we come into, and it shows us the number of applicants that have applied to each position. So we can look at maybe this accountant position here. And there are 23 applicants as of today that have applied. The second screen that we're going to go into is let's see who those applicants are. And so we're going to click on the number. Now there are 2 places you can click in this menu. If I click on the accountant one, the position, that's going to open up that position. If I want to change maybe the job description or maybe the number of requirements or requisition number or something like that, then if I click on the actual title of the job, I can edit that position. For today's training, we're going to focus on clicking on the number of applicants. So I'm going to click on that number 23. And the next screen that comes up, this is our second screen, gets a little bit more detailed. This will show who those applicants are that have applied to that position as of right now. So a couple things are going on this screen, and we want to look at those. Each column, if you click on the header of that column, it will sort by that column. By default, the skill match strength, which is over here towards the far right, when you first come in, that is the column that it will by default always be sorted by. But again, if I wanted to sort by maybe the process step, then I can click on that. You can see that now they're sorted in the order that they're in the process, maybe from the earliest to the latest. Okay, if I want to switch it from the latest to the earliest, then I can just click on it again and it'll reverse the order. Okay. So the applicant's name's in the far left-hand corner. We'll talk in a few more minutes a little bit more about the rating, but we do have a 5-star scale, and you can move that applicant from no stars all the way up to 5 stars as you move them through the process, and that's very open to your interpretation of how you want to use 5 stars. You don't have to use it at all. The application date is the date that they submitted their application online. And again, that might be an example of where you want to see who came in first. If you're doing, you're going to review the first in. The process step, remember from one of our previous trainings, that is a custom list that you can set up. All right, by default, that'll be a blank canvas, and we've set up several things here, and so I can sort by that and see who's early on in the process to maybe down towards the bottom who's a little bit further along in the process. The status just means that these applicants right now, they're all pending, meaning I still need to review them or I'm doing something with them. That, again, is open to your interpretation of how you want to use that. Some clients don't use it at all. Pending is usually, most of the time, used when you're kind of reviewing an application and still making a decision as to whether or not you want to take them further into the process. There is an in-process status, and usually that's when you've scheduled an interview or you've contacted them to take a next step in the process. And that's just to help you keep organized with who's where at in the process again. The applicant source, Remember on one of our last trainings we set up different referral sources from where an applicant may go to. So for example, they may go out to Career Builder or one of the jobs boards or Monster or something like that, and they can apply for the position there, and we've created that unique URL that will redirect them into our applicant tracking system. This applicant source column here will let us know where they came from, where they clicked on to apply to that position. If it's blank, that means they came onto your website and accessed the site directly from there. Okay. The other reason that they may be blank is if you didn't create a unique URL and somehow they just found your site or Googled it and found your site, keep in mind applicant source will be blank for any non-external source. And it could be if they're an internal candidate, they would obviously apply from their employee portal, so they wouldn't have an applicant source either. The skill match strength, when we set up in our very last training, when we created the job posting, one of the things that we did there is create a skill profile. That's our baseline of what we'd like to see in an applicant. And again, it doesn't kick anything out necessarily. All that does is line us up to say, hey, we wanted 5 or 6 skills, and out of those 5 or 6 skills, how many of those did this applicant have? And we can see here, if I sort by that I have a handful of applicants that actually had all the skills that I was looking for. Let me switch again. You can sort from lowest to highest or highest to lowest. The last 2 columns, resume on file, that will let us know if they've uploaded a document. And so one little tip or trick there you want to make sure you're aware of is we can't determine if it's an actual resume. We can only determine if they've uploaded a document on the resume tab. So remember when we were building our profile on what tabs we wanted the applicant to see, if we chose the resume tab, which some people would choose to rename document or uploads or something like that, if they upload something, then there will be a check mark here that they have a document attached to their record. Okay. And as an administrator, you can always go back and add a resume for them. If maybe they bring in a hard copy or email copy, you can always upload that to their file, and then they would have a check mark here as well. The very last column, are they an active employee? And one of the most beneficial parts of that is if you have some internal applicants, that's an easy way to see who is an internal applicant versus an external applicant. So you can see here that the top 3 do have check marks. They're very light, but they are checked. The 4th employee, that is an external candidate. And we're going to see in a few minutes why you would use that far right-hand column, the check boxes. That's actually for declining people en masse or doing a few different things en masse. We're going to use those check marks. So we're going to come back to this screen here in just a few minutes. But let's say we're going to take an example here of, let's just take Greg, who is one of our external candidates. So let's go down to Greg. And we want to get a little bit more information on Greg. Let's find out a little bit more. Maybe I'm a manager, an administrator, and I want to review his application. So let's click on his name. So when we open Greg up, this brings up his applicant profile. And this is the most detailed part of the applicant. Over on the left-hand side, I have some actions that I can do. So starting at the top, this is where I would move them through the different ratings. And all I do is hover my mouse, and once I find the rating that I want to move them to, he's right now on 2. Say I want to move him to 3, I just hover over on the 3rd star and click it. And now it'll give you the message that his rating's been updated. The status, we said he's in pending. Maybe we've reviewed, and we wanted to move him through a little bit further into the process, so let's move him to in process. And let's move him down to, maybe we need to make a decision on him. So let's move him a little bit further down in the process step. Remember, those are custom steps that he'll define. The source, I already know that this candidate came from Monster. It said that it came from there. So I'm going to save that top information. Once that saves, then let's talk about some of the actions that we do down here. Oftentimes you may have multiple people in the system, and so it's hard to keep track of what you've done or maybe comments that you want to make and you want other people to look at that. So one of the things that is beneficial for a lot of our clients is to make a note on this candidate. Notes are viewed by all administrators or managers who have access to this category or this candidate. So let's use as an example, you may come in as an administrator and say that you think this candidate would be a great fit. Okay? A manager or another administrator, once you save that, we'll now have a screen kind of like below. You have as many notes down here as you want. It'll tell when the note was added and things like that. Okay? That's a great place to come back to. When you're getting ready to make the decision, you want to come back and kind of review everything. If you're doing a good job of keeping notes, that's a great place to come and look. The surveys would be if you have set up for a reference survey to be sent. You can see in parentheses it says 0, so that means I haven't sent any. I haven't got any back either. I can add one. That doesn't email it to anyone. That just adds the survey, and I can complete it for the applicant, or I can print it and have the applicant fill it out. But this doesn't email a reference. If the system automatically sent, if the applicant came on and put, let's say, 2 references in, and the system automatically sent those 2 references a survey, remember you set those up on the job posting. If you were to have those, it would have 2 in the parentheses here. And you would also see down a little bit below where we have references. If they have responded, it will come into that references link, and you'll see what their responses are. The application history, see that there's 2 in parentheses. So what that tells me is not only has Greg applied to this position, but there's another position that he has applied to. I'm not sure if it's open or if he's been declined, or maybe we've hired him under a different position. But that's what I'm going to click on that link for right there, and that's going to tell me he's actually applied to 2 positions in the company. Accountant 1 and Reconciliation Specialist, and the date that he applied to those. Okay. Right now, both of those are open, so he hasn't been declined on either. He hasn't been hired in either. Okay. One of the things with this screen that is beneficial is that you as an administrator can apply him to another position. He may have came in and misread some job descriptions, but you've reviewed it and you think, hey, this guy would be a great asset just maybe in a different capacity or different job. So you can apply the candidate to another open job posting. The email log is basically going to show us any emails that the system automatically tried to send Greg. We had set up some templates in one of our prior trainings on how emails can automatically be sent through the system. And this is one of our initial emails. It's a thank you for applying to the company. This is red because it got rejected. Greg probably gave us a bad email address. And so under rejected, it would say true. It was rejected. And it also turns red. A positive email that was received is going to be in normal black font here. If I want to see what the email would look like, I can click on that preview icon and it'll pull up a copy of that email. Okay. If Greg has given us a better email address, or maybe you've met with the applicant and when they filled out the application, maybe they just transposed the letter or something incorrectly, you can always go back in and edit the application to the correct email address. Once you've saved that, then you can come in here and click resend email, and that'll send to the new appropriate email address. Let's move down a little bit further. Activity history would show you just a log of anything that you've done on this applicant. If the applicant has logged in or modified anything, this will show an overview of everything going on with this applicant. And then down below, let's talk about the actions a little bit. The most common action is probably just to print the profile. And it doesn't necessarily physically print it, but it combines their profile into a PDF document so that you can look at it. You may want to save it into a folder while you're looking through things. Again, because this is all electronic and we don't necessarily purge information, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to save it somewhere, because it'll always be here, but a lot of people prefer to work with a lot of PDF documents in one place. So it is common to come out and pull up the profile in PDF and then save it and review it. If you're not allowing managers access to the applicant tracking system, this is the preferred method to have them review information, to have the applicant apply online. Go in and print the profiles of the ones that you want your managers to review. And again, you can save these and email them to managers without having to physically print them. Down towards the bottom, let's say again that we want to move forward a little bit and we want to bring the candidate in for an interview. Then we can schedule an interview through the system. And again, that kind of records the actions that were taken on this candidate. You don't have to schedule an interview through the system. You could do that through traditional means, through email or phone call or things like that. But in this interview screen, we're going to pick the type. You only have two, phone or on-site. The date and time, you're going to set those up, much like you're creating a calendar invite in your email system. You're going to put any notes. Those are included in an email to the applicant. The ones that are not visible would go to maybe the other managers or other administrators. Maybe it's a location of where you want to have it at, or maybe information you want them to bring to the interview or something like that for the managers are down here in the second box. The box email interview request to applicant, by default that's checked. This will send an email to the applicant. It is not a calendar invite. It is just an email. If you don't want to send that to the applicant, then you would uncheck that box. And then on the right-hand side, interviewers, these are listed all as managers in the company, so every manager is going to be listed in this list over here. And whomever you want to participate, you would put a check mark by their name, and they'll be included in the interview request. So I'm not going to email this applicant, but I am going to add the interview record. Okay. And now for me as an administrator, this shows me down below who I have scheduled interviews with and on what date. So let's exit out of the interview request. And the last thing before we actually hire or decline an applicant, just want to make a comment. The right-hand side, this is the applicant information that they put online. So they've gone through a process. They looked at screens very similar to what you're going to see over here. And the reason this is here twofold. One is for you just to review it, to open it up and see, hey, where does Greg live? I need to get a phone number for him. This is where you come to grab that information. Okay. Also, if you've met Greg in person, maybe you need to update some of his information. He's filled out an application, and you want to confirm that what he put online is what he put on his application when he came in. Or again, back to the email issue, he gave you a bad email. He could have just made a mistake. This is where you come. You can edit all the information on his application so that now you're keeping it up to date. All right, so over on the left-hand side, the actions. We've printed the profile, which is just pulling it up in PDF. We've scheduled an interview, which just sends an email. And now we're ready to make a decision here. We're ready to hire the employee or ready to decline them. So first, let's review declining them. I'm not actually going to decline them, but let's pull that up. The decline reason we've talked about before, that is a custom list that you will create. You can have that as big as you want. Okay, probably the more detail in that list that you put, the better. That's what we found. So let's just put something here, for example. If I want to email the applicant, then I'm going to check that box, send decline email to this applicant. Now, we realize that a lot of times if you create a standard template, which we create a standard template in one of our prior trainings, so that's what's going to pop up down here at the bottom. That is our template that we built. But we realize that a lot of times you may want to soften it up a little bit per applicant, or maybe there's certain situations or certain things that happen during the process to where you may want to change some of the wording a little bit. So you can, down here at the bottom, you just change the body of the email. You can edit that text down at the bottom. Okay. That is an HTML email, so you can change the color of the font and underline and bold and things like that. Okay. So if we were to save and send this, this would decline the applicant, and they come out of my open prospects or open candidate pool. I'm not going to save this. Let's look at the hiring process now. So I'm going to click Hire Applicant. And Hire Applicant, what that does is we've already got the core information of the employee that we need. There's just a few more pieces that we didn't collect during the application process that we need to make them an official employee. Remember, this is not an import-export. The employee's already technically kind of in the system as an applicant. Now we're ready to move them from an applicant status to an employee status. Before we do that, we need a few pieces of information. The first one is, what date do we officially want to hire them? What's going to be their hire date? Fill date, that's for the position. So again, remember the very first thing we talked about is when you come in, that's going to show us all open positions. And if I don't fill it, or if my fill requirement was just one, if I put a fill date in, it's going to assume that that position is now filled. Benefits eligibility date. You don't have to type anything in there, just click that equal sign. That equal sign will look at the benefit rules that we have set up and the eligibility rules and determine based on this employee, their hire date, things like that, what their eligibility date should be. The applicant's social security number, their employee status, and their employee type. All those are custom fields to you, the employee type. Right now we have regular full-time and regular part-time employees. And then what is going to be their starting salary and what date should that be effective? Typically the effective date is going to be their hire date. So we're going to put in either a salaried amount or check this box here, this radio button, and put in their per pay amount, or we're going to put their hourly and put their hourly rate in. We do not and should not include overtime rate and other rate. We will calculate their overtime rate automatically. And once you're finished with this information, you would click Hire Applicant. Okay. And we're not going to hire or terminate Greg here or decline Greg. We're going to do some more work on him here in just a few minutes. So I'm going to X out of the screen. But one quick tip, when you click Hire Applicant, that puts the employee as an employee status opposed to an applicant status, but they're still not ready yet to come into payroll. There are a few fields left in order for them to complete the integration and become an actual employee in the payroll system. A couple things that are still required would be assignment of federal and state taxes. A lot of times that's included in an onboarding process that you want the employee to do, so it's left out of the applicant screen. You also want to consider direct deposits. That doesn't stop them from coming to payroll, but it's something that you should consider and make sure that you have or that the employee enters themselves. But the other requirement would be cost centers. If you have cost center requirements in your payroll system, then the employee needs to be assigned to a cost center. So now we've made our decisions on the applicant. Let's take a step back to one of the screens I said we'd come back to and see a couple of other things that we can do here. This is our mid-level view where we can see all the applicants, not anyone in particular. And I said that that far right-hand column, we may want to do a few things. So let's just check a couple things here. Maybe I want to check 2 or 3 employees. I can print those selected applicants. It basically prints the profile of all of those that I put a check mark in, so I don't have to go into each one and print them. I can also go over to additional options, and this is typically used for mass decline. I can also mass update a process step. So if I want to take 4 employees from, I reviewed their application to a first interview, I can do that. Typically, I'm going to move them to a process step. In this case, let's just say that I'm going to decline them. I'm going to put a reason, and if I want to email them all a standard message, it's going to pull from my template email. And once I am ready, I would click this update process and decline reason for those selected employees. So that's how you mass decline a lot of employees. Okay. And we're not going to do that right now. We don't want to decline all of those right now. Okay. A couple last things up at the top. Scan existing employees. This will look through your current employee base to see if there's anyone who has some skills that may match what you're looking for. So there are a few employees who have some of the skills that I'm looking for, and it's just a suggestion that some of these might be a good place to start if you want to look for internal promotions. Last but not least are a few reports. And some of these reports, the top few are around surveys, if you want to see the results at a global level, not just necessarily for one employee. Also, if you wanted to create mailing labels, if you want to send out maybe an invitation or a thank you letter, and you want to be a little more personal than an email, you want to send a letter out, then this would print mailing labels to address envelopes. All right, so that concludes the applicant tracking training. That was 4 sessions that started from the basic build of the applicant tracking system. We followed up in session 2 with some of the more advanced settings and customizing the site to specifically what would meet your process and your organizational needs. Session 3, we created jobs. We published jobs and got them out there with job descriptions and customized some things to each individual job that may be unique to that one specific position. And then today we wrapped up with managing the applicants that have come in and what to do with those applicants. We'd welcome questions and feedback that you may have. Just please contact your account manager, and we'll be happy to review any questions that you may have. Thank you.